The mighty Thor. People can't get enough of him, especially recently. Marvel's Norse god has been swinging Mjolnir since 1962. And he's still at it. From comics to movies to video games to animation, the Thunderer is loved by many, and we have Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Larry Lieber to thank. Or do we? Did the writers 3 actually create Thor? Of course, I'm not talking about the Thor from myth. I'm talking about Marvel's Thor, but recently I've stumbled onto another Thor. A Thor from 1940 who had a lot of things in common with Marvel's Thor. So the question is, did Marvel steal Thor?
Cross the rainbow bridge of Asgard, where the booming heavens roar. You'll behold in breathless wonder the god of thunder, mighty Thor.
So who is this other Thor? Well, first, let's go back to the golden age of comics. After the debut of Superman, the comic industry became a growing titan. Issues commonly sold over 100,000 copies. There was a high demand for new stories, and there was a mad dash by publishers to provide. Every publisher desired to have the next breakout character, to catch the eye of the public like Superman did. So commonly writers were told to write the next Superman, leading to many characters that felt like rip-offs of the Big S. This inspiration, of course, led to some suing by the Man of Steel's publisher. Fox Features Syndicate was one of the legal victims thanks to their character, Wonder Man. So after losing that case, they probably wanted a new Superman-like character, but without the legal hangups. Well, if you're going to get an all-powerful character like Superman, why not get one completely safe of any legal consequences? Enter Thor, because you can't copyright myth. So now let's get into Fox Features Syndicate's Thunder God. Grand Pharaoh was an everyman taking his gal Glinda out to dinner, see? Then a suave, debonair gent seduces the doll and they get out there to hit the town. Grant goes back to his apartment and contemplates killing himself. Whoa there, buddy. Thankfully, Thor the Norse god shows up, gives him his powers, and Grant saves his girlfriend from the seducer, who in reality is a criminal in a gang. And I know you're wondering, what does this have to do with my Thor? The one from Marvel? More than you know, actually. To start with, they're both blonde, unlike the red-headed Thor in myth. Neither of them need a chariot, belt, or gloves for flight, strength, or to wield Mjolnir. All of their powers come from using their hammers. Both Thors can shoot lightning from their hands. Both Thor's civilian identities share one being with the god Thor, as it refers to Grant here, transformed into Thor's being. And in Marvel's Thor comic, it was revealed later in the Kirby Lee run that Donald Blake and Thor were one and the same. Thor was cursed by Odin to live as a mortal, unaware of his past god life. Odin did this so Thor can learn humility, and eventually Thor did. In his first issue, the name of Thor is given to Grant Barrow by Thor, and a full 75 years later, Jane Foster would receive the same treatment. Speaking of Jane Foster, she was originally a nurse and Thor's love interest. Guess who else was a nurse and Thor's love interest? That's right, it's Glinda! Kind of strange, isn't it? But it gets stranger with the second issue of each Thor's comic. Grant/Donald and his love interest travel by boat to a war-torn country. On the way, their boat comes under attack, so Grant/Donald hide from sight to become Thor and protect the boat. Eventually, they arrive to the war-torn country and save it. That's incredibly similar. So did Lee, Kirby, and Lieber steal Thor? Well, maybe not steal, but it probably lingered in the back of their minds. Especially Kirby's. You see, Kirby worked for Fox Syndicate in 1940, the same year and months Fox Syndicate's Thor was coming out. Kirby was also a friend and frequent collaborator of the editor at the time, Joe Simon, who he co-created Captain America with. So it's almost impossible for Kirby to not know of this Thor. Thor and various elements of him would appear in other Jack Kirby stories like Boy Commandos, Young Romance, Tales of the Unexpected, and DC's Sandman. Jack Kirby would also work on the character Captain Marvel, a story about a mortal becoming a superhero after quick action and a lightning strike. and he got these powers from a cave, like a certain other weak mortal. But what of Stan Lee? Oh, he too had the mighty Thor in the back of his brain. In the Venus series he edited and wrote for, both Thor and Loki appear. Then there's Stan Lee's collaborator, Steve Ditko. He had his own Thor at Charlton Comics. The weak blonde man known as Thor entered a cave one day. The cave showered him with light, which made him stronger than he was before. Deeper in the cave was a mighty hammer, which he took along with him while leaving the cave. Outside, he carelessly tossed it against a tree. The tree was no match for the hammer. Sound familiar? Along with this Thor was another at Charlton. This other Thor at Charlton Comics only appeared briefly, but his hammer was an important part of his debut story. In the story, a blonde man has hurt his ankle and is in need of a cane, so he buys one from a local shop. After a while with the cane, he feels much better than before. In his state of joy, he swings it around playfully, and he hits a tree. Instead of clanging against it, it cuts clean through. Sound familiar? But how would Lee, Kirby, and Lieber hear about this Thor? Well, Ditko was working at both Marvel and Charlton at the same time. Ditko could have mentioned the other Thors at Marvel at the time, and one of the three could have one or both of those Thors in the back of their minds while creating theirs. In conclusion, I don't think the writers three stole these Thors. But it's hard to deny the influence of these other Thunder Gods. A merging of ideas that created something incredible. Something amazing. Something mighty. The mighty Thor.